What is up, everyone? Welcome back to No Cap Space. Tyler and Greer here a little bit earlier than expected today. Greer, obviously the playoff-a-thon continues where we're live after every playoff game. That's happening tonight. But we just had some breaking news, Greer, and we've had a little bit of news kind of trickle down over the course of the past 24 hours or so, but this is the big hitter here. Coaching cycle is here. Obviously, we've seen Seattle.
We're in full swing.
We're in full swing. We had seen Chicago and Dallas, the reports from Eddie Kaspal in Front Office Sports saying that they're keeping their coach. We're going to touch on that. But, Greer, this is the big shock. Frankly, to me, it's a shock. Sandy Brondello will not be returning as the New York Liberty head coach. Obviously, a disappointing year. But to me, a year that was disappointing within reason with the amount of injuries and everything that went down. Like, obviously, just won a championship. Like, they're still technically right now the reigning champions until, for a couple of weeks, but like they are still actively on the back of this championship. You have the injuries, doesn't matter for Liberty as a franchise. They choose to not renew the contract going forward into 2026. Just your immediate reaction to this.
Shocked also, I watched Sandy for a very long time in Phoenix and, when New York hired her, there were I would say questions of is that the right thing? But the reality is she ultimately helped them win a championship, their first ever in their franchise's existence. And that's just kind of a tough look. Like you said, this is a team that was marred by injuries this entire season. Every one of their big three missed significant time this year. And then obviously a lot of the times that overlapped as well.
Right.
They were able to push Phoenix, right, who was the higher seed, to a 3-game series. Obviously, we could talk about how that game ended,
right,
and that fourth quarter, right? But that's just tough. We're just probably in a much different era in the WNBA, where, especially if you're a team who truly has all the resources at your disposal, like if you are the New York Liberty, the tolerance is just low.
Right. Yeah, especially, obviously the talent is still on the roster. And so it's if you want to go on the basis of they were technically healthy by the time playoffs came around and still were a first round exit. But I just realistically, and we kind of talked about this with Seattle and when we were talking about their opening, this coaching cycle doesn't feel super deep. Obviously, you might be able to go and there might be names especially from an NBA perspective, we've seen some of these coaches kind of come over that maybe we're not considering. But to me,
international as well.
Yeah, true, for sure, 100%. And so, but to me, this isn't a move you make unless you have a coach in mind. And obviously, the New York Liberty, as you mentioned, all the resources there. Stewie said that she's coming back. I'd be surprised. I would feel like more of this roster would come back than not. Generally speaking, obviously in terms of this offseason, just vibe based.
JJ has gone on record, said that she wants to be back. We also in the post game of Game 3 said that she wants to be back. Sabrina said she would be back.
A little shaky. It was right? Kind of a weird answer. Yeah.
I don't know how convinced we are that she was telling the truth, but I think she also just could have been caught off guard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the question in general. So you have your nucleus saying that they want to return to the New York Liberty. But again, we have presumably 2 expansion drafts coming up, as well as the regular draft, as well as, all veterans basically being free agents in this league. So that was another thing that Sabrina said, we know that not all teams stay the same year to year, but they've obviously enjoyed themselves and the team that they had constructed this year. So, but to your point, you're not making this move without knowing exactly who you want to steer your ship moving forward. I don't think it's going to be some open interview process.
Right. I'd be shocked. I really would. There maybe it's 2 or 3 names that they're okay, it's we have a couple interview ideas, but I don't think you're going to see this job on LinkedIn. I don't, I don't think that this is going to be some, put your application for. There has to be, whether it's one name that they already we're rolling, and we'll get that at a later point, or if it is, a true, genuine, like more like closed pool. Because I think Seattle is like they feel a little bit more open, right? Obviously, the expansion franchises are gonna be a whole bunch of candidates. I would presumably at least would be doing a whole bunch of candidates. This one, again, like it's not a hard sell. Like even if it's a different team, right? And you have like your core, but the surrounding is different. You're the New York Liberty. You have some of the best resources in the WNBA. You're in New York, right? Just from a market perspective, like it's not a tough sell to bring a player to the New York Liberty, right? You've now won. You've got over the hump. Like the crowds are there. Like it checks every box realistically for what you would want in a WNBA franchise. But we mentioned Sabrina, and of course, I do have a message to deliver. Shani was unable to join us here, but said, please, on my behalf, tell the people I said Sabrina is so ass she got her coach fired, LMFAO with a whole lot of O's. So that is your message from Shani on this. But yeah, again, this isn't the strongest coaching cycle to me. Like even last year, right? Like we knew, like, okay, the assistant coaches, like whether it be the Aces assistants or it felt like there was a genuine pool of like these people feel like they are due and kind of next up. I don't feel that here, and it's especially like for a team that is obviously like this is a move that is disappointing that you did not go further and win now. Like this isn't a rebuilding move from New York by any means. So like. You're obviously in the market for a coach that you believe can go and win now. And I don't know how many of those names are like currently in, like at least in the WNBA, right? Like currently in the W right now, as you mentioned, obviously the NBA side, the international side. You mentioned that someone on the staff that you think might pop up here.
Yeah, I think and forgive me if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. I should have done more research on this, but Sonia Rahman, I think, had experience on the Memphis Grizzlies coaching staff. I think it was before she was hired by the New York Liberty. So when you talk about having that blend of experience, right? I believe she also coached at like MIT previous to joining the Memphis Grizzlies. So just like super smart, right? Knows the players, like. Yeah, this is I don't know how much tolerance Stewie and JJ and Sabrina have for a coach who's never coached in the WNBA.
Yeah, that's what's
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so in some ways, it's like you have to be getting somebody who has some experience, or they beat me at least, right? Like if you're Stewie, like all I've ever known is like amazing coaching. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like she's just a super, super hard superstar to impress, and so you have to be 100% confident in who you're bringing in that can command, and not that Stewie is like, hard to coach or anything, but there's just a level there.
There's a standard of it. Yeah.
So, it will be fascinating to watch, but yeah, I have to believe that they have their person.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if we saw some level of like open process here. Because again, I mean, this is a coach has won titles before, has won the title last year with the Liberty, and don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of complaints for Sandy Brondello, like and even as you mentioned, like dating back to the hire, like in her time with Phoenix, where it felt like could she have done more with the talent that she had. I never I had my problems with Sandy, but in terms of like doing more with the talent, like she was making the finals, like and like got your ring, like I don't know, like
I mean, yeah, this is still a woman who has 2 rings and about 5 or 6 finals appearances.
Like there's not many more stamped coaches realistically in the WNBA, so it's like I mean, if you were tapped in with the streams, you know how I feel about some like the prioritization of players on the roster and like who's eating when and whatnot. Like, and those I still stand by those complaints, but goodness, I mean, in terms of finding somebody else that is stamped with that resume, and resume certainly doesn't mean everything, but like finding someone with that resume, if you are still looking to win now, which the New York Liberty absolutely should be, and I'm sure certainly are, I don't know in this cycle in particular. I don't know where that name is exactly coming from, but so to that point, I fully assume that they must have a name that they're confident in mind, whether it be on the staff, like you mentioned, maybe it's from an outside kind of source, like whether it be international or the NBA. We've seen some of those coaches come over as well. So I'm very intrigued by this. I mean, again, I'm shocked. Like this, it almost kind of reminds me of like when LT got when Latricia Trammell got fired from Dallas, where it's like, okay, like you had this disappointing year, different caliber certainly, but like the disappointing year, but with injuries, and it's like, okay, like you had success the year before. And then you have this really injury burden.
So many uncontrollables, right?
Yes, like it's just completely out of her control. And then it goes and gets you fired. Like that, it's an evil world we live in. Like it really is, because that's brutal. But I'm sure New York has somebody in mind that is going to be leading this team going forward.
And I know you're saying, like this cycle, like to you doesn't seem as like the options aren't as vast in this cycle, but like Portland, Toronto, like you should absolutely be calling up Sandy Brondello and ask her,
for sure.
Will she, coach you guys into the future, into your immediate futures, and see what you guys can make shake. Like again, there aren't that many players. I mean, there aren't that many coaches in this league who have done what she's done, period.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be interested in what her appetite would be for like an expansion franchise. Like it could be great. Again, I don't know. Like I'm just genuinely curious about what that would be. Would you take Sandy in Seattle?
It feels very stopgap-ish. Like, could she come in and maybe we win? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I've seen her do it before.
Sure.
So it feels like a Band-Aid, though, a bit of a Band-Aid instead of like just a total reconstruction. You know what I mean? But yeah, I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at it, but I'm with you. I was like, I don't know how like moved I would be like in terms of like, again, because you're kind of in a perfect world, you're kind of finding a coach that might lead you one more year with win now, but like you're going into the future of the Dominique Malonga era and I don't know if Sandy is exactly like in terms of like the vibe of that. That's not the teams that she's coached before. Like it's not really that. Like she's coached very talented rosters over her time, and again has won. So like.
Yeah,
I also wouldn't be mad if that was the move. I would understand it from a Seattle perspective as well, especially if you're just kind of wanting to, even if it is a stopgap, like just wanting to try and run this back like one or two more seasons, like with this kind of core before fully giving the keys over to Malonga. I could I could understand that line of thinking, even if it is more of a stopgap type of thing. But again, I assume New York has their person in mind, but two teams that certainly do are Dallas and Chicago, who are keeping their head coaches. Certainly plenty of discussion about these coaches, especially on social media. When you got superstar players like Angel Reese and Paige Beckers, it's bound to happen. And the criticism and the critique, a lot of it valid across the board. I wanted to kind of gauge your feelings here before we wrap up with, obviously the big news is the firing, but I mean, this is large news as well to see two coaches that obviously struggled, like just from a team perspective, team-wide perspective struggled, but are being given the time to just get past his first year, which is some people, like obviously we saw last year, Teaspoon, Lord knows we never really got a full reasoning into the whole background of everything, but didn't get that opportunity. So we know that this is a league where, and specifically a franchise in Chicago, right, that doesn't always afford that opportunity. And so we now see these two coaches, Tyler Marsh and Chris Koklanis, being able to get that. Well, I brought up Chicago, so we'll start there. Like for you, Tyler Marsh, again, obviously kind of a weird one as well. Like with Angel being out for a decent chunk of the season, and I mean, just it sounds like a whole lot going on in Chicago. But like for you, Tyler Marsh getting the opportunity to continue on here, your thoughts on it?
I think he just has a really hard job.
Yeah.
The job is just really hard. And I thought that there were some bright spots along their season this past season. Definitely need like better like game management, right? Like, but we can say that about every coach almost outside of like two in this league, you know what I'm saying? So and like that will come with time when you're just truly making these decisions all the time, you know what I mean? Or relying more on your staff to help you see things. Like it will just come with time.
Yeah.
I still like the coaching staff he built, sans the nepotism. I just got to be honest. Like I always thought like Chris and Tyler Marsh were allowed to bring family members onto their staffs, which I just thought like in terms of resources, in terms of like extra, it's not to say that they think the same or anything like that, but in terms of assembling the absolute best staffs possible, you know what I mean? Picking family members, like that's just an interesting path to go on, So with that said, like what I'm really looking for, and it'll be hard to kind of accomplish with now all of the options players have in the off season, right? Whether it be unrivaled or AU or overseas. How can you continue to develop the young players on your roster, right? Like that was your calling card for so long with the Las Vegas Aces, is your ability to develop players. So like Angel and Camilla are largely going to be doing their own things this offseason. And even coming into this season, like they both got a lot better to me.
Yeah.
I trust their work outside of the program.
Agreed.
You know what I'm saying? But the Maddie Westfelds, the Haley Van List, right? Like, how can they take leaps in year two? How can Michaela Onyenwere or Ariel Atkins is a seasoned vet in this league. So like, what are the things that you guys can demonstrably get better at going into your second season as the Chicago head coach?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm in a pretty similar boat across the board. Like I didn't think that really either of these coaches would be fired, but and to me, I thought, to your point, there were probably more bright spots from like a systematic standpoint in Chicago than there was in Dallas to me. And as you mentioned, the game management is a thing, certainly. But again, that's not these two coaches specifically. But to me, that is a thing that you can learn over time, right? And like it's hard with coaches, and especially especially I feel like in the W, when you have like a major star on your team, like the amount that just gets thrown your way for right or wrong, because it can be both, right? But like there's just a lot thrown your way in that sense, whether it be blame or whatever it could be, and this was not a roster that I liked. And then you mix in Angel being in and out of the lineup, and like there's just it was a lot, and as you mentioned, Chicago is just a hard job. As we've covered plenty about this whole kind of saga of like with Angel Reese and kind of towards the end of the season here, and with the Chicago front office and the organization and all the problems that we have talked about over the course of that kind of story arc, is what you're having to deal with as a head coach in terms of trying to get players in the building, in terms of resources, and like you so on and so forth, right? Like I wouldn't want to stay in the offseason at the Chicago facility, especially now when I can go play unrivaled, right? So like those are the type of things that you're just going to have to kind of face, right, in this scenario of being the Chicago Sky head coach. So I agree with you that there was enough bright spots to me, like where it was like there were things to be encouraged about in terms of the system and what you could try and find and the potential growth. And as you mentioned, certainly heralded as the player development coach in Vegas, right? So like that is I'm step by step with you here in terms of like what I'm looking for in year two. It's just the next steps, and it sucks that the GMing has kind of taken the rebuild aspect out of this, because it still feels like we should be there, like in terms of like where the kind of core, if you will, of this roster is growing and growth, and that's like, and it's not a league that gives a ton of time, but like if you were to give a coach like with the background of player development time with a rebuilding roster, in theory, like the timeline would add up, right? Where you give Tyler Marsh the time to develop a young roster and see what happens from there. And the trades, like the Ariel Atkins trade and whatnot, don't even get me started on that, but it just hasn't really lined up, and it sucks, frankly, to me for Tyler Marsh. But I appreciate that he's getting still to some degree the time to go and try and do this development, even if it's now a little bit kind of wonky in terms of the entire organizational and roster timeline. I'll ask you the same question now for Dallas. I don't know if any coach got more shit over the course of this season than Chris Koklanis. Again, some right, some wrong, like valid and invalid. As the UConn faithful here, Greer. Paige Becker.
It's not even about that, for real.
Yeah,
it's not even about that. I can just evaluate Chris on just the season, right?
Yeah.
Again, incredibly risky to hire him knowing that Paige Beckers was coming to your franchise, period. Mm-hmm. Incredibly risky first-time head coach at any level, really. Beyond be like, I don't know, high school. I don't know about his like early coaching career, but right, like in the top ranks, this was his, came from USC where he was no Tino Shea, not even the associate head coach, or you know what I'm saying? Like it was a very, very, very tall order for Chris Koklanis. And, I'd be curious about how he would rate himself this year. You know what I'm saying? But the things that I just can't ignore are just like, the Dejanay Carrington portion of the season, the Nalissa Smith portion of the season, right? Just the body language of the players when it came to taking direction from him, it wasn't very inspired. You know what I mean? Never mind the whiteboard moments, right? Or the clipboard moments, right? It's just incredibly candid, right? And it's not very convincing looking at the players' reactions and faces in those moments. So, defense, I believe, was his like calling card, right? That he's been a defensive coordinator in this league before. Can you tell me where Dallas ranked on defense?
I can go find it. I'm sure it's probably not going to be anything good, but continue on. I'll go looking.
Yeah, this is the one where I have a bit more concern about his ability to do it.
12th,
12 out of 13.
Only funny enough, only the Chicago Sky were worse. Yes. Just
so I'm not incredibly sure what you're so encouraged about in year one of Chris Koklanis. I'm just not. And then like the reality is like, as franchises, you do answer to your fans.
Yes, and they were loud. Like they were like you didn't
several times this season, so much so that players were getting into the crowds and saying like, "Could you guys stop?"
I was there. I saw like the first night that really started, like with like the Nola Henry, the assistant.
And these are not all paid stands. Let's be clear, right? Like this is not just 13 girls between the age of 12, 18 doing this. You know what I'm saying? Like this is people who are season ticket holders, long-standing fans of Dallas Wings basketball. So you have to listen, right? You got to listen. And I'm just less convinced that this was the right move. I get that these are Kurt's proteges on this staff, and that's how it goes too in sports sometimes. Sure. But Kurt's been around this game a very, very long time. So I don't recall watching their exit interviews. Maybe you did, since you covered them a lot closer this season.
No, but there wasn't much.
Yeah, kind of, bland answers. But I if you're a Dallas Wings fan or just what is the plan?
Yeah,
obviously you're going to get a lottery pick, this offseason. I also think because of Paige and her reputation, there will be there will be free agents who are at least willing to pick up
facilities on the way. Is like
at least willing to pick up the phone. You guys are going to be going to a new arena, so there are promising things happening. Yeah. And I think that's the message that Paige gave, is just that like, stick with us. Like, I'm not necessarily I'm here now, but I'm here now, and I'm pushing the envelope in terms of like what the expectations are.
Yeah.
Here, you know what I'm saying? It also seems that I have the ear of our general manager, because Kurt also during the season and with Enrique said like they would both call him and say, what if we get so-and-so, or what do you think about so-and-so joining our team? So it seems like your two stars are heavily invested in what you're building.
Yeah.
Which is good. But I'm not certain if like this coach in particular is the one that's going to be able to see them through.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I there was a lot of stuff like with Tyler Marsh. Obviously, the team success didn't come, but as we mentioned, it felt like there were like tangible bright spots of system of his growth over the course of the season. Like even if it's just him being fired up on the side, like like there's moments where you're like, oh, okay, like where you're like, oh, this is something, right? It never felt like we had many, if any, positive moments like that, and that's where it certainly can happen. And again, like the growth of coaches and everything. I guess to me, and certainly this is some personal bias, but like when I think about what Latricia Trammell was able to accomplish in Dallas, and I understand Kurt Miller wanting to come in and clean house, because the Dallas Wings have been the Dallas Wings, right? I get that, like genuinely, I do. But like to me, you had a coach that was still like relatively new in the head coaching game, like 2 years, but was new in the W space, but like had established a genuine identity and like had found success. And I just it's hard for me to then go, okay, well, we're gonna fire this defensive coach in LT and go hire this defensive coach in Chris McClonis that hasn't done it before on this level, hasn't done it like really as a head coach ever. Like LT had prior, experience at the kind of the lower college levels.
No, just like no woman is getting that job with his resume. Period. I'm so sorry.
Well,
I'm just keeping it.
I mean that, yeah, for sure. Like I don't disagree, and that's where it's like, again, at least like Tyler Marsh, right? Like maybe not the head coach, but you've been an assistant on, multiple time champion. Like you've been, in that realm, right? And you've been under Becky Hammon, who's been heralded as this fantastic coach, and obviously Koklanis has spent time under Kurt Miller, right? And so like that personal aspect there is something that it's kind of hard to ignore in that sense. And that, obviously, as you mentioned, this happens in sports. Like connections are important, relationships are important, right? And having that firsthand experience can be a good thing, but also going in and finding a new voice, right, can also be a very good thing. And so to me, I'm not nearly as moved in terms of what comes next in Dallas from a coaching perspective as I am in Chicago. And again, just the flashes of positivity weren't nearly as bright. And as you mentioned, the fans saw it. It doesn't help certainly that Dejanay, who's obviously injured now, but has been able to go and do her thing in Minnesota. Melissa has been doing her thing in Vegas and have both looked like rejuvenated, right, in these new places under coaches obviously who are stamped completely in Cheryl and Becky. But like it's kind of telling to me that like it's able to flip in that way. And again, obviously very different organizations and that like completely different situations from top to bottom, but it's hard to ignore all these things. So like I can appreciate a coach getting more than 1 year because it does take time to implement. It does take time for new head coaches to go and learn and grow and do all these things. So I can appreciate, generally speaking, that this is happening. And I don't, yeah, like
unless you're not in Lacrosse
hello
or Carlson Wesco.
That's what's crazy is that like you see coaches and as you're completely right. I mean, you're 2 coach of the year candidates, like legit, like top candidates, both first year WNBA head coaches. Obviously, Smesko had been head coach for forever for Florida Gulf Coast, but Natalie not in that way. Like I came from the assistant route, so like similar more to Chris, and the difference in hires, right? And even like if you look at like Lynn Roberts in LA, like obviously I've been critical of the Sparks, but like certainly a lot of good things to come.
Boy, Rasheed Menzion, like we got to like let's really.
Like, if you're looking at every hire, if you're ranking these hires,
I've been talking about in our chat, right? Yeah. About like the non-playoff teams. Mm-hmm. Who do you think is best suited, right? And like if you take non-playoff teams, so Chicago, Dallas, Connecticut, LA, and is there one more?
What you said? Connecticut. Wait. I've deleted the non-playoff teams from my brain. Washington.
Yeah,
that's what we're missing. Washington. Yes. Who is? I mean, maybe the best suit of them all. Yeah.
Right. Like in terms of talent, right? Yeah,
for sure. Mm-hmm.
And clear path forward. Yeah.
The
Of
teams.
those 5 coaches,
Yeah.
right now, I would say like Lynn installed her offense
Mm-hmm.
quickly,
Mm-hmm.
got to business quickly.
Got Rakia rolling, like yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Rashid Mezi, like we just thoroughly enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. The style is there, the effort's there. Like it's like
Yeah.
you know what the Connecticut Sun. That's what I think is interesting right now. LA, you know who the Sparks are going to be going forward under Lynn Roberts. Connecticut, you know who they're going to be under Rashid. Like Washington is going to be, it's a little bit different because it's, you know, like they kind of saw change over the course of the season roster wise, like with Sykes leaving and whatnot. But like, you know, they're going to play hard. You know that they're emphasizing these young players, and like you have an idea of where Washington is headed one way or another. You kind of,
and I don't get the impression that they're in a hurry to win. They want more assets.
Exactly right, and that's why it's like a little bit more open ended to Washington, but not in a bad way. Like it's in a good way. Chicago, again, certainly problems of in there, but I still feel like there was more flashes of direction in Chicago. Dallas, you have Paige Beckers. That's your direction right now. And that's like that, like the flashes were Paige being Paige, nothing organizationally, like there wasn't like the young players like Genesis, like Isaiah James had her moment. Certainly JJ Quinley being able to step up in the starting lineup has certainly, like there were other general positives, but when you're thinking big picture long term, right, really your positive is that Paige Beckers is Paige Beckers and who you thought she could be in the WNBA. Outside of that, there's not many other from like an organizational or coaching perspective where these other teams, to some degree, some certainly less than others, but like to some degree have that. And that's where I'm hesitant with this for Dallas more than Chicago and certainly more than any other teams that didn't make the playoffs, because they're way more set and foundationally sound right now than Dallas is. So again, I can get behind coaches getting more than 1 year. It felt certainly like last year with Spoon and again, Lord knows the reasoning behind. I mean, we never really got any further information on that, but like that felt like whoa and like jarring and abrupt. I don't know if it would have felt that way in Dallas. I think there would have been a little bit more material in the sense of like this isn't working, you know. But I could still, to a point, get behind coaches getting more than one season to try and figure stuff out. So
yeah,
I don't know. We'll see. But again, to wrap here, I mean, we went long here, and we'll be back tonight too. Playoff-a-thon. Yes, game 2, round 2. We'll be here. We'll see if Phoenix can bounce back after that dominant first half that they had, and then falling apart in the second. Can the Indiana Fever keep it up and take both games in Vegas? That would be insane. But I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. And I'm sure if Shawnee's on tonight, she'll have a couple of Liberty thoughts as well, because of course she will. So make sure you guys are subscribed here so you don't miss the lives tonight. And going forward, we're live after every playoff game. And what we're doing is every night, the playoff-a-thon, we're live. So I know you feels like, man, I want a post game for women's basketball. We got you. We got you covered. So no need to complain. No need to do anything. All you got to do is subscribe here and be notified when we go live, and hit the notification you're here. So all the links down below in the description as well to make sure you're tapped in across the board with no cat space. And until, I don't know, maybe about 12 hours.
Yeah. Literally.
When we're recording this, we'll talk soon.